That first show opening, Mr. Myron Herman and our national anthem live. And there are the Stars and Stripes. There is Brian Cooper with 950 jumps, about to go to 950 for some formation maneuvers that you'll see later ahead. Turnaround in trail. The Cap 10 aircraft now starting out into a dive. They'll be looking for about 170 miles an hour. One of the signatures of the 9X Yellow Pages sponsored French Connection aerobatic team is their tremendously tight formation. It's straight and level and upside down in formations just like this. It is Montaigne in the 9X Yellow Pages lead ship. Danielle is off on her wing. Now Montaigne does all of the direction for the team. When they're in formation, Danielle only keeps his eyes on that target spot on the fuselage of Montaigne's lead ship. He doesn't look at airspeed, he doesn't look at direction or the ground. He has no idea where they're at. His duty, in order to stay that close to her ship, is to make adjustments on that relative position at all times. Now they've separated into an area we call in-trail. In-trail is set up with two loops that we call the squirrel cage loops. First Montaigne pulls back, upside down. Danielle looking over his shoulder now, going through Montaigne's smoke. As the speed dissipates across the top, down to about 70 miles an hour, diving the airplane down, 180 horsepower, Lycoming engine built in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. North Star Avionics, manufacturer of the famous M1 Loran. If you intend to buy a Loran, try the ball, and it will convince you that the M1 is the best. By the way, they are also sponsored on their national tour by Mobil AV1 Aviation Oil. Played by accident in Miami, Florida, by Len Povey way back in 1936. Called the Cuban 8 because at that time, as he explained it, as he did the maneuver for the first time, he was the chief flying instructor for Batista's Cuban Air Force. And out of respect for the great Len Povey, we have continued to name that maneuver the Cuban 8 from that time to this. Montaigne now, very graceful. Makes it look like you and I could do it. This is very demanding flying. When you're putting the airplane into attitudes like this, close to the ground, you have to have the background, the dedication, the mental and physical discipline of a champion. Both Danielle and Montaigne now set. Now Montaigne will come back in from your left and set up for a maneuver we call the 4-point hesitation roll. There's 1 point, she holds it, 2 to the upside down, 3 back to knife edge flight, and 4 back to the right side up, diving the airplane down to get the entry speed for the next maneuver. Next maneuver she'll be accomplishing will be 2 maneuvers combined into one. It's the big inside or barnstormer's loop. Right about in here, she executes a snap roll on top of the loop. That's in fact what we call it here in North America, a loop with a snap on top. Over in the UK and parts of Europe, that maneuver is known as the avalanche. Now Montaigne will break away and climb. High, a full vertical roll as he waves the wings. Diving the airplane down, picking up speed, holding the altitude just a little bit, looking for about 180 miles an hour. We'll pull to the vertical right about in here. Now, losing the horizon, he'll look out the side of the canopy, pulling the stick to the left, way far in the corner, and executing the full vertical roll. Still has enough speed to cap it off with the hammerhead turnaround. You were right. And changes direction and is able to dive the airplane down. Now get ready for this next maneuver. If you have a camera, this is called the lump shavak, where the airplane tumbles nose over tail over nose over tail. Watch this. As it goes wildly out of control, the tail goes over the nose goes over the tail like a balsa wood airplane in a windstorm. It is the lump shavak. It is Czechoslovakian slang term that is hard to translate, but if you could translate it in English, it would come close to this. The equivalent of drinking too much plum brandy. Out of control. That's what the lump shavak is. It was developed by Czechoslovakian aerobatic champion Ladislav Bezak, now residing in Canada. Was going to defected from Czechoslovakia under fire from MiGs with his family in a single-place airplane. Quite a story right there. But he showed us the 5 different types of lump shavaks. Danielle doing the full vertical snap roll, capping it off on top. Into a hammerhead. Now watch for the quarter turn back off in the original direction of flight. Now, if we were to talk to Danielle or Montaigne in the cockpit, the physical exertion that goes on inside of the cockpit manipulating the controls, you'd hear that they were short of breath, like somebody that was running a triathlon. And that is the athletic ability inside the cockpit as Danielle sets up for the point rolls. 4 points of an 8-point hesitation roll. Keeps the airplane in the upside-down position. Now to gain altitude, this time pushes the stick forward. Flies across the top in the outside or negative G environment where he is straining or hanging by the seatbelt. Now Danielle gives way to Montaigne. Montaigne coming high and to your left with 9X Yellow Pages, ship number 1. Trying to dissect that horizon at exactly 90 degrees. By the way, while she flies this aircraft, the single-place version of this airplane, the Cap 10, manufactured in France by Avions Modry, specifically for aerobatic competition and called the Cap 230 and 231, we have found out has just won first and second place in this year's World Aerobatic Competition held in Switzerland. And the French pilots, the civilian pilots, reign supreme, and a version of this airplane is now the leader in World Aerobatic Competition. So the French got their gold medal. The airplane was much like this one here. Danielle and Montaigne are the marketing arm of Avions Modry. The Elegant Circle, pushing the stick forward, all the gravity forces to the tune of about 4 to 5, trying to pull him out of the cockpit. How about a big round of applause?
Daddy will Sarah, Daddy will pick you up. Come here.
Perpendicular to the fuselage, but it was the early efforts to be able to sweep that wing like every Top Gun aircraft now has that gave the airplane greater acceleration and more forward speed. And when these pilots were pushing 200 miles per hour back in those days, that was considered to be a tremendous amount of speed. They were actually racing with aircraft like this and winning races with aircraft like this. The Mohawk Mall, our official sponsor this weekend of the great Elliott Cross. And by the way, while he's climbing for the inverted flat spin, I'd like to tell you that inside this airport, the Schenectady Airport, at last year's air show, that particular photo that you see inside of your program, out of about 75 or 80 that were submitted at our winter convention, came out on top. Top honors were given to Elliott Cross. He won here last year. The camera was mounted on the struts between the wings. It shows Elliott Cross, perpendicular and dangerous inverted flat spin. He will deliberately roll the airplane to the upside down position and start it into a spin. But the airplane will be spinning flat. It will be pretty much parallel with the horizon, and it has taken many pilots and their planes to a fiery death towards the ground. The smoke comes on, there's number 3. Still flat, still upside down is number 4. The horizon, nothing but a blur, number 5. Lower, lower, 300 feet on every rotation is number 6. and he comes out of the inverted flat spin. How about a big round of applause for the great Elliott Cross? Show sponsorship of Elliott Cross as he backs up into the tail slide maneuver. The weight of the engine takes over. Now you'll hear the power coming in as his left hand goes toward the throttle and moves it back to the full position. Smoke back on. Now you can see that swept wing design on the top wing that we talked about as he sets up for the Lumshabach, tumbling the Great Lakes end over end, nose over tail once again. Now picking up his points on the horizon and recovering straight back down from an airspeed of around 40 with the momentum going in the tumbling maneuver end over end, picking up speed in just a few seconds up to 140 miles per hour, executing two difficult maneuvers into one loop with a snap roll on top. Now if you direct your attention out to the runway area, very soon you will be able to see out there getting ready for a surprise finale after Elliott flies his aerobatics. Now, Elliott in the upside-down position, but his name written right side up. Now, you see the reason for that. No, when the airplane was sitting on the ramp, that wasn't a mistake. The name was written upside down. It's because Elliott spent so much time in the inverted flight position. Now, very soon, too, we will see one of his signature maneuvers as this man, Elliott Cross, in the Great Lakes Special, executing a maneuver that comes directly out of the motion picture The Great Waldo Pepper. It was George Roy Hill's effort to depict a number of barnstormers that were around trying to gain a reputation back in the early days of aviation, and they were trying to be the first civilians to do the negative G or outside loop. Now remember, that was back in the late 20s and early 30s. The aircraft structures were not able to take the negative G environment. The aircraft were breaking up in the air, or else the power plants were so low on horsepower that the airplane couldn't do the full outside or negative G loop without crashing. Elliott setting up for the very crisp now 4-point hesitation roll with that nose nailed on that target spot on the horizon. Now with the smoke off, he picks up altitude once again. We should be ready for Elliott to be able to achieve about 1,000 feet above the ground. When you hear the engine rev in and out, keep your cameras on Elliott. He will push the stick forward, setting up for the outside loop. Done first by a military pilot in Dayton, Ohio. That pilot, Jimmy Doolittle, the airplane, a Curtiss Hawk. Later, the first civilian pilot in the first civilian-owned airplane to execute the outside loop was Fearless Freddie Lund. The place, Los Angeles, California, the year 1932. We'll listen now for Elliott to rev the engine as he gains about 900 to 1,100 feet of altitude. That will be the signal that he will be starting to push forward. From a speed of around 70 to 80 miles an hour, he'll push forward. Watch for the rudder to make its way closer and closer to the concrete. As he rolls the airplane to the upside down position first, momentarily holding it there. Now rolls back to right side up position. Now listen. As he sets up first for the snap roll. Back comes the power. There it is. There's the smoke. Here he comes forward, pushing forward. All the gravity forces trying to force him out of the cockpit. Lower and lower and lower. Speed reaches about 140 miles an hour. Now the push. This was the part where the airplanes would come apart or not make it up across the top without stalling out and going into the ground. But Elliott Cross completes the Waldo Pepper outside loop. How about a big round of applause for Elliott and his official sponsor, the Mohawk Mile, and the Great Waldo Pepper outside loop. Our tribute to Jimmy Doolittle and Fearless Freddie Lund. Elliott now vertically rolling that airplane from out in the late 20s and early 30s. Now, look at the individuals heading out to the runway area. They are making their way out there just behind where the air show airplanes are parked. They have some special equipment that Elliott will be using. A little later on, we will be departing our U.S. Navy leapfrogs, who are presented this weekend by our friends from Pepsi-Cola. Elliott Cross now executing the hairpin loop, bringing the wheels right down off the deck. By the way, with all the skill that Elliott has, he is one of the few individuals left in North America that is very proficient in the art, the lost art of skywriting. He has written the message. Rolls the aircraft now into the point positions, number 6, number 7, and number 8, every 45 degrees. Elliot's going to pick up a little bit of altitude. The helicopters that those crew members. But first he pulls back on the stick in this classic all-time airplane and does the double, the triple snap roll, induces the airplane into a tail slide and recovers the opposite direction. The two-turn spin straight up. Now the top thing, pointing the airplane straight down towards the ground. And there's the signal. The crew members go out to the center of the runway. Elliot Cross will make another look at those poles. Remember, the span of the wings and the span of the poles are only different by a couple of feet. He will have just a little bit of clearance on the right, just a little bit of clearance on the left. And the airplane will have to be low enough to be able to cut that ribbon. There's the ribbon visible now out on the runway. You can see how low it is. The pole's set up. Elliot coming in from the right. Get the cameras ready on the Mohawk Special. From Jacksonville, Florida, Elliot Cross will be attempting to break that ribbon. What I didn't tell you, though, as he comes back in, is a little surprise. Okay, he's looking it over. It has to be right. He flies over the top. It looks good to him. He'll be making his pass from our left to our right as he sets up for the crop duster turnaround. Everything is set. He wanted to make sure the poles were not leaning inward. He wanted to make sure that there was no slack in the string that holds the ribbon. Any slack gets him closer to the earth. Now, low and to the left, what I didn't tell you, that Elliot's going to do it. Upside down the hard way as the rudder makes its way closer and closer to the concrete. Check the poles, check the crew members, check Elliot. On comes the smoke, making the last few corrections on the lineup. And hits the ribbon dead on. The poles come in. How about a big round of applause for Elliot Cross? Now, as Elliot is landing to our right, if you look off to our left, back behind the helicopters that are...
And what they're going to attempt to do now is fly side by side with another jumper, and then one jumper will turn into the second jumper, and the second jumper will grab the canopy of the first jumper, and that's called canopy relative work. And once they stack their parachutes together, they'll then have a guy come in third, and they do a little formation. When they do get together, like you do see two parachutes right now connected, the bottom guy will then give a little break, and the top guy will slide down the bottom jumper's line. So it appears that the top jumper is standing on the bottom jumper's shoulders. And now you see another guy coming in third. When someone comes in third like that, the two parachutes fall a little slower, so the third guy can just drive his parachute right into the bottom jumper. And it gets easier and easier when you get more people. So we got a guy coming in fourth now, and he's just together. So up there we have two biplanes, a four stack, and a single canopy. And he's probably going to come into one of those formations. When you have a big formation like that, the top guy, the top jumper steers the formation. He's the pilot. He does all the work. He makes sure that the parachuters make it back to the drop zone and land right on that tee out there. And what you see is the top, on the fourth stack, two guys are going side by side. That's called a tee. Now, if you watch that tee formation, he'll fly his canopy upside down. The reason he can fly his parachute upside down is because the parachute stays inflated by going forward. As long as your parachute is going forward, the canopy will stay inflated. As you can see, the jumper is upside down in his parachute. He's just holding on to the third jumper's legs. There is a lot of tension on this formation right now, and they're going to bring that in, and then they're going to drop it into a downplane. When you go into a downplane, you're basically falling around 60 to 70 miles an hour to Earth. It looks like we got a couple downplanes. And here we have one right overhead, and they're going to bring it right. When you do break it like that, you get a little whipping action because there's a little tension. And we got, just so you people know what it's like, that's what it looks like. These rockets, four on each side, act as one extra engine for the airplane. Performed on the ice-capped, snow, and ice-covered runways. And all, obviously, for you today, for this performance. So here he comes now in a skis down configuration. If you've got binoculars, you can look at the skis and you notice the wheels will be protruding about 3 to 4 inches below the skis. Again, this doesn't hurt us when we do our snow landings. It's just the position that the skis are in relation to the gear. So you see the skis right now? That's the position that you'll see when we land on the snow and ice-covered runways. He's at full flap, skis down. Give me a little wing walk there. We can move the throttles of the airplane and vary the pitch so we can back up if we need to. Sort of like you'd be backing up out of your garage. Well, we can't back up out of our garage over here, but if we get in tight situations where we have to back up or turn around, we can do that with this airplane. So I see he's got his lights on, meaning his checklist is complete. The skis, again, are hopefully up. I'm sure they are. And he'll be showing the max performance short field landing capability of this airplane. Right now, he's about 100 knots coming over the threshold. And again, off to your right, if you see those orange plywood panels, he's going to try and touch down that airplane short of those panels. Let's see how he does. He looks pretty good now. Right past the panels. Boom, right before those orange panels into the landing zone, getting on the brakes. Well, I'd say that was almost 2,000 feet, maybe even a little less than that. He's going to pull up a little bit here. Loadmaster's telling him to back straight back. He's backing up. Round of applause. We certainly appreciate everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, our helicopter is now ready to depart. Our line is now overhead and behind us as we await the full plane and the flight. If you would like to refer to the children's area is where you can get reunited. Now, coming down the flight line in the red pause, all the way from Jacksonville, Florida. Elliott Cross at the Chalet area heading for Air Show Center. In front.
Blue Angels, taxi in type formation, just as you will see them perform here this afternoon.
You don't like the noise?
No, he doesn't like the noise. Yeah.
Commander McLean in the slot. As the
Watch how our two solo pilots detach on signal from Captain Moneymaker and set up for the first of their opposing maneuvers.
Zachary! I know, Zachary stands up.
Lieutenant Commander Inman and Lieutenant Commander McLean will now demonstrate the Diamond Flat Pass. Simultaneously, the very precise Diamond Hill on the roll. Aircraft pilots and enthusiasts who understand the difficult transition from the cruise to the landing configuration will appreciate this next maneuver demonstrated by our two solo pilots. Approaching speed for both aircraft are in the carrier landing configuration, and they approach a maneuver we call the hook. Approaching at 350 miles per hour. The line of breath is flat pass. Behind the spectator area, Blue Angel 500 miles an hour.
There we go, there we go.
Turnout stack down and aft. On a 45-degree bearing line to establish a right echelon formation. From the right at 350 miles per hour. The Blue Angel, echelon 3. The right echelon, flat pass.